At my daughter's high school graduation party, she stood on a chair in the middle of our backyard, a space I'd spent 20 years cultivating, and raised a glass of champagne I had bought. With a beaming smile, she announced to all our friends and family, "I have the most amazing news. My stepdad, Marcus, bought me a car for graduation." She paused for the applause to swell before delivering the final, crushing line. "A brand new convertible." It's amazing what happens when you have a parent who actually cares about what you want, unlike my real dad, who never bought me anything. The silence from my side of the family was deafening, but her mother's friends all cheered. I just smiled, a tight, polite curve of my lips, and I even clapped along. I raised my own glass and said, just loud enough for those nearest to hear, "Congratulations, sweetheart. You deserve it." The next morning, as the sun rose, that brand new convertible was repossessed from the driveway. An hour later, my ex-wife and her wonderful Marcus received a formal, couriered notice that I was selling the house they were living in, and they had 30 days to vacate as per our divorce agreement. And by noon, my daughter Chloe received an email from the university's financial aid office informing her that the private trust that was set to pay for her dormitory, meal plan, and living expenses had been frozen pending a character and conduct review, citing a specific clause in the trust agreement. Her tuition was paid, of course. I'm not a monster. I'm just a man who believes that actions, and words, have very real, very proportional consequences. You see, her real dad may have never bought her a flashy car, but her real dad owned the stage she made her announcement on, the ground it stood on, and the entire financial reality she had just so carelessly detonated. My name is Frank, and I'm a civil engineer. It's not a glamorous job. I don't close multi-million-dollar deals on the golf course or post inspirational quotes on social media from a rented yacht. I build bridges, foundations, and infrastructure. My entire life is about creating strong, silent, reliable things that people take for granted. Things that only get noticed when they fail. For 18 years, that's the kind of father I was to Chloe. I was the one who was there, every single day. I was the one who taught her to ride a bike, not by giving her a shiny new one every time she fell, but by patiently holding the seat, running alongside her until my lungs burned, and teaching her the physics of balance. When she had a nightmare, I was the bedrock she could run to. When she had a school project on building a Roman aqueduct, I didn't just buy her a kit, I spent a weekend with her in the garage, teaching her about load-bearing arches and water displacement, using real schematics I'd simplified for her. Our project got an A+, but more importantly, it worked. It was solid. It was real. We didn't have a flashy relationship. We had a foundational one. My love wasn't in grand gestures, it was in the consistency of my presence, in the mortgage payments that kept a roof over her head, in the insurance that covered her when she broke her arm, and in the quiet college fund I started the day she was born, contributing to it every single month without fail. It was boring, stable, and utterly dependable. I was the foundation, and for a long time, that was enough. I thought that was what mattered. I was wrong. What I failed to account for was the seductive allure of the superficial, a force of nature more potent than gravity itself. The divorce from my ex-wife, Karen, was amicable on paper but emotionally messy. I didn't fight her on much. I just wanted Chloe to be insulated from the fallout. In my naivete, I thought generosity was the best shield. So, I was more than generous. I gave Karen the house, or rather, the use of it. The deed remained in my name, with a legally binding clause in our divorce decree that she and Chloe could live there, rent-free, until Chloe turned 18 or graduated from high school, whichever came later. After that, the property was mine to do with as I wished. I paid a substantial alimony and covered all of Chloe's expenses, from her phone bill to her school trips. I thought this would provide stability. Instead, it created a consequence-free environment, a perfect petri dish for entitlement to flourish. And then, about 2 years ago, Marcus entered the picture. Marcus was a lifestyle entrepreneur, which I soon learned was a euphemism for being unemployed with access to a credit card. He was all flash, no substance. He wore designer clothes that were just a little too loud, drove a different rented luxury car every month, and documented every moment of his aspirational life on Instagram. He was the human equivalent of a cheap watch that looks expensive from a distance. He dripped charm, calling me big guy and clapping me on the shoulder, all while subtly positioning himself as the fun, exciting alternative to my quiet stability. He never talked about work or finances, only about experiences and living your best life. Karen was smitten, and Chloe, at the vulnerable age of 16, was completely captivated. He was the fireworks display, and I was the load-bearing beam holding up the stadium. Nobody ever applauds the beam. The shift in Chloe was gradual, then sudden. Our quiet weekends of hiking or working on projects in the garage were replaced by her spontaneous trips to the city with Marcus and her mom. They'd come back with bags from expensive stores, posting dozens of photos online, always with hashtags like #familygoals and #beststepdadever. Marcus would buy her things, a new phone case, a trendy jacket, concert tickets. They were small, transactional gifts that created a public spectacle of generosity. My support was invisible, silent, and assumed. His was loud, photographed, and celebrated. When I'd try to talk to her about it, she'd get defensive. "Marcus just knows how to have fun, Dad. You're always so serious, always talking about saving and planning." She started to parrot his language. My meticulously planned family vacation to the national parks was boring. My advice to get a part-time summer job to learn responsibility was a total drag. Marcus told her that talented people shouldn't have to work menial jobs. One time, I came to pick her up and Marcus was there, polishing the grille of a rented Maserati. He winked at me and said, "Just showing Chloe what success looks like, Frank. You gotta manifest your dreams." I later found out from a mutual acquaintance at the bank that Marcus had bounced a check for his half of the utility bill at the house, a bill I had to quietly cover to stop the power from being cut off. I said nothing to Karen or Chloe. I just filed the information away. It was a small crack in the facade, but I knew from my work that even the smallest crack, under pressure, can bring the whole structure down. The pressure, it turned out, would be applied by my own daughter. The graduation party was my final, grand, invisible gesture. I paid for everything. The caterers, the marquee in the backyard, the decorations, the open bar that Karen had insisted on. I wanted it to be perfect for Chloe, a celebration of her hard work. I even swallowed my pride and was cordial to Marcus, who floated around the party like he was the host, accepting congratulations on Chloe's success as if he'd had anything to do with it. The day was fine, filled with polite chatter and the proud buzz of a family milestone. Then came the toasts. After I gave my heartfelt, if slightly boring, speech about how proud I was of the woman she was becoming, Karen insisted Marcus say a few words. He clinked a fork against his glass, a showman taking the stage. He talked about welcoming Chloe into his life and how he saw a real spark in her. It was all generic, self-congratulatory nonsense. And then he dropped the bomb. "And because Chloe is such a special, high-value person," he announced, his voice booming, "I decided she deserved a high-value gift. So I bought her a car." He gestured dramatically towards the driveway, where a gleaming white convertible, adorned with a giant red bow, was parked. There were gasps, then applause. Chloe ran to hug him, tears in her eyes. It was pure theater. That's when she climbed onto the chair, giddy and overwhelmed, and delivered her speech. When she said, "Unlike my real dad, who never bought me anything," the words hung in the air like poison gas. I saw my own parents flinch. My sister looked at me with a mixture of pity and rage. Karen just beamed, stroking Marcus's arm. Chloe didn't even look at me. In that moment, I wasn't her father, I was a punchline in the story of her wonderful new life. I felt a cold, sharp clarity settle over me. It wasn't anger. It was acceptance. She had made her choice. She had declared her values. All I had to do was honor them. I smiled, I clapped, and I began the quiet, methodical process of demolition. The next morning, I was up at 6 a.m. The party debris was still scattered across the lawn, a sad confetti of the previous night's betrayal. I made a pot of black coffee and sat down at my desk. There was no rage, no desire for petty revenge. This was a structural correction. A realignment of reality. My first call was to my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Cynthia. I explained the situation calmly and told her I wanted to exercise my rights to the property as stipulated in the divorce decree. Chloe had graduated. The conditions had been met. Cynthia, who had seen me through the divorce, simply said, the 30-day notice to vacate will be couriered to their address by 10 My next action was online. I logged into the joint account I still shared with Karen, designated strictly for household emergency repairs. I saw that 2 weeks prior, she had withdrawn $5,000. The memo read, Chloe's future. I now knew it was the down payment for the convertible. I also knew that Marcus's name wasn't on the financing, Karen's was. And the only reason she would have been approved was because of the substantial alimony I paid her, which was her only source of income. I transferred the remaining funds from that joint account into my own and sent a secure message to the bank manager to close it, citing misuse of funds. The third step involved the most forethought. When I set up Chloe's university trust fund, my lawyer advised me to include several clauses. Most were standard, but I had insisted on one, a character and responsibility clause. It stated that the disbursement of funds for non-tuition expenses was contingent on Chloe demonstrating sound judgment, personal responsibility, and respect for the foundational support provided to her. Her public declaration was a flagrant, documented breach of that clause. I drafted a formal email to the trust administrators, attaching a short, factual summary of the incident and citing the specific clause. I requested an immediate freeze on all non-tuition disbursements pending a formal review. The final piece fell into my lap. Around 8 a.m., I got a fraud alert email from my credit card company about a suspicious charge at a high-end car dealership. Marcus, it seemed, had tried to use a supplementary card I had given Karen years ago for Chloe's emergencies to pay for the car's initial insurance and registration. It was declined, of course. He was not only a fraud, but a clumsy one. I didn't even have to do anything. The dealership, faced with a declined card for insurance and a bounce check for the down payment, because I knew the $5,000 she took wouldn't have cleared in time, would have no choice. They would retrieve their property. I just sat back, sipped my coffee, and waited for the calls to begin. The foundation had been withdrawn. The collapse was inevitable. The first call came at 9:15 a.m. It was Chloe, her voice a hysterical shriek. Dad! The car is gone. They took it. A tow truck just came and took it away. They said the payment failed. Can you call them? Can you fix it? I let her finish, her panic washing over the line. I took a calm sip of coffee. Chloe, I said, my voice even. I'm sorry to hear that. But the car was a gift from Marcus, wasn't it? That's his responsibility, not mine. You should probably talk to him. There was a stunned silence, followed by a stammering, but you can fix it. You can just pay for it. I let the irony of her words hang in the air. Chloe, you stood up in front of 50 people yesterday and announced to the world that Marcus was the one who takes care of you now. He's the one who buys you things. I'm just respecting the new arrangement you announced. Call Marcus. I hung up before she could respond. The second call came an hour later, this time from Karen. She didn't bother with pleasantries. Frank, what the hell is this? There's a man at the door with a letter saying we have to be out of the house in 30 days. You can't do this. This is Chloe's home. I could hear Marcus muttering angrily in the background. Karen, I said, my tone as placid as a lake. Please refer to page 17, section 4A of our divorce decree. The one both our lawyers signed. It clearly states the terms of your residence in my property. Those terms have now been met. It's not personal, it's contractual. It's just business. This is our life, she screamed. You're doing this to punish us for the car. Not at all, I replied calmly. I'm simply managing my assets. Since Marcus is so successful and clearly capable of providing for you both, as evidenced by his grand gestures, I assumed you would be moving on to a lifestyle more suited to his success anyway. I'm happy for you. You have 30 days. I suggest you start packing. I ended the call. I wasn't punishing them. I was liberating them. I was liberating them from my boring, reliable, invisible support. They were finally free to be supported by the flash and spectacle they admired so much. The full picture of their self-inflicted disaster came into focus over the next 48 hours. The third call was Chloe again, this time in tears from a completely different vector of panic. The university. Dad, the university said my housing fund is frozen. The email said you reported me for something. How could you do that? Where am I supposed to live? Her voice was a mix of terror and indignation. I didn't report you, Chloe, I said, keeping my voice steady and factual. I simply informed the trust administrators of an event that may have breached the terms of the trust agreement. An agreement you were sent a copy of when you turned 18. It's their decision to review it. Remember the clause about respect for foundational support? It seems they took your public speech very seriously. I could hear a man's voice yelling in the background. It was Marcus. He was shouting, "Tell him he's a pathetic, jealous old man. Tell him I'll get you a better car. A better house." Chloe went quiet for a moment, and then I heard her say, her voice small and shaky, "Marcus, the bank called Mom. The down payment check for the car bounced. And they said your card was declined for the insurance." The yelling stopped. The silence that followed was more damning than any shouting match. The flimsy curtain had been torn away, revealing the pathetic, broke little man behind it. The illusion of Marcus, the successful provider, had evaporated in the harsh light of a single bounced check. He wasn't the guy who bought her a car, he was the guy who tried to steal $5,000 from her mother to put a temporary down payment on a car he couldn't afford. His generosity was a performance, and my foundational support had been unknowingly funding the stage, the lights, and the props. When I finally cut the power, the entire show collapsed, leaving him exposed in the dark. Chloe's next words to me were barely a whisper. He's packing a bag. He's leaving. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just said, "I'm sorry you're going through this, Chloe. When you're ready to have a real conversation, you know where I live." 2 days later, my doorbell rang. It was Chloe, standing on my front porch, looking smaller and younger than I had seen her in years. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was clutching a crumpled piece of paper, the eviction notice. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with a profound, gut-wrenching shame. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat in the living room, the same room where we'd built that Roman aqueduct years ago. The silence stretched on, thick with unspoken words, until she finally broke it, her voice cracking. "Why are you doing this, Dad?" It wasn't accusatory anymore. It was a genuine question, laced with desperation. I leaned forward, my hands clasped in front of me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The facts were loud enough. "I'm not doing anything to you, Chloe. I've simply stopped doing things for you. Things you made it very clear you didn't value." I paused, letting that sink in. "At your graduation party, a party I paid for, in the backyard of a house that I own, you stood up and announced that your real dad never bought you anything. You publicly dismissed 18 years of my support, my work, my love, as nothing. You chose to celebrate a man who offered you a shiny object over the man who built the foundation you stand on. You presented a new reality to the world, Chloe. A reality where Marcus is your provider and I am irrelevant. I simply chose to believe you. I chose to honor your declaration." I picked up a photo album from the coffee table, the one with pictures of her learning to ride her bike, of us covered in paint from decorating her room, of our trip to see the Golden Gate Bridge, a marvel of engineering I had wanted her to see. "This," I said, tapping the album, "is what I bought you. I bought you stability. I bought you safety. I bought you opportunities. The tuition for the university you're about to attend? It's paid in full. By me. That is a gift worth 10 of those convertibles. But it's a quiet gift. It's a foundation. It doesn't come with a big red bow, and you can't post it on Instagram. You told me, and everyone else, that it meant nothing. So I'm taking you at your word. I am respecting your choice to value the shiny object over the solid structure. She started to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean it, she whispered. I was just so excited. I got carried away. I believe you, I said softly. But meaning it doesn't erase the consequences. You're 18 now. You're an adult. This is the first and most important lesson of adulthood. Your words have weight, and your actions have a price. You wanted to be treated like you were all grown up. Congratulations. In the weeks that followed, the new reality settled in. Marcus was gone, having vanished as quickly as he appeared, leaving behind a trail of debt and broken promises. Karen, faced with having to find a job and an apartment for the first time in 2 decades, was in a state of perpetual panic. They moved out of my house at the end of the 30 days, not into a luxury condo funded by Marcus, but into a small, 2-bedroom apartment across town that smelled of stale cigarettes and desperation. Chloe had to take on 2 part-time jobs to pay for her share of the rent and her living expenses, one at the university library and another waiting tables. She sold the trendy clothes Marcus had bought her. She learned how to budget. She learned how to take the bus. For the first time in her life, the invisible structures that had always supported her were gone, and she could feel the full weight of the world. She didn't call me to fix it. She was learning. About a month into her first semester, she asked if we could have dinner. I took her to a simple, quiet restaurant. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. She told me about her classes, her jobs, her budget. She was meticulous, showing me a spreadsheet she had made. She was proud that she was making it on her own. Towards the end of the meal, she looked at me directly. I get it now, Dad, she said. The foundation. I never saw it before. It was just there. I took it for granted. I took you for granted. I'm so sorry. I saw genuine remorse in her eyes, not the panicked regret of being caught. I saw the beginning of wisdom. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. I know, I said. And I'm proud of you. I didn't undo everything. I didn't just turn the money back on. That would have invalidated the lesson. Instead, I reinstated a portion of her living expense stipend from the trust, matching what she earned from her jobs, dollar for dollar. I told her it wasn't a handout, it was an investment in her hard work. Our relationship is different now. It's being rebuilt, not on the old, assumed foundation of a parent and a child, but on a new, stronger one of 2 adults, built with mutual respect and a clear understanding of consequence. True support, like a well-built bridge, doesn't need to be flashy. It just needs to be there, strong and silent, ready to carry you safely to the other side. And you should never, ever forget to thank the engineer.